The spiritualist movement in the United States began in 1848, and shortly thereafter came the advent of spirit photography, a genre that is defined by the attempt from the passive hand of the photographer to capture images of unseen spirits. William H. Mumler was the first to capture this kind of image. The photo Mumler captured was a self portrait in which he is seen standing beside an empty chair. Yet after the negative was developed, Mumler saw a previously unseen female spirit sitting in the chair, of whom he identified as his deceased cousin. From there, his business took off. The former engraver, alongside his wife Hannah Mumler, moved from Boston to a New York studio in 1862 to begin their enterprise at 630 Broadway. Hannah Mumler was a self-proclaimed medium and spiritual clairvoyant, and together, the Mumlers were better able to tend to their clientele. One client of particular notoriety was none other than Mary Todd Lincoln, the former First Lady. The image from her sitting with Mumler depicts the ghost of President Abraham Lincoln standing above his wife. This carte de visite became extremely popular and highly circulated within the public. That being said, it is important to note the cultural context in which spirit photography gained its popularity. The Victorian era brought many strange practices in mourning, practices that were heavily influenced by the growing levels of materialism and commercial culture. For example, the Duke of Wellington's funeral has long been regarded as the most well-attended and extravagant event of the 19th century, in which mourners dressed up, purchased tickets and themed goods, and watched as the Duke was pulled to his final resting place via 27-foot-long horse-drawn hearse. Because people wanted to attend a celebration, not a funeral, the true grieving processes became an increasingly private affair. The practice of deathbed and post-mortem photography became increasingly popular as well, as mourners with photos of their deceased loved ones regained some sense of control in their grief away from the public eye. Another aspect that should be noted as a factor in the rise of spiritualism is the Civil War, in which many men lost their lives at a very young age, and subsequently families were left to mourn their losses. With this extreme grief comes a desire to communicate with the dead, to access those who have departed. Seances became a cornerstone of the spiritualist movement, and photographing seances became a subsect of spirit photography as well. As is the case with Mumler and his wife, mediums would often attend spirit photography sittings, and therefore solidifying the otherworldly experience for their clients. Along with the believers of the spirit photograph came many skeptics, and after being accused of fraud, Mumler was put on trial for his practices in spring of 1869. Though many found him guilty and the defense produced 9 plausible ways the photographs could be manipulated, Mumler was ultimately acquitted. P.T. Barnum's testimony against Mumler was one of the most sensational of the trial. Barnum hired Abraham Bogardus, a New York daguerreotypist, to fabricate this photo of Barnum with the, quote, spirit of Lincoln in order to demonstrate how easy it was to forge spirit photographs. Similarly, a French photographer by the name of Edouard Bouguer also stood trial for fraud years following in 1875. Unlike Mumler, Bouguer immediately confessed to his photographic manipulations, and in so doing, he effectively undermined the beliefs of the spiritualists by acknowledging his trickery. Despite his very serious confessions, many clients of Bouguer continued to believe that their encounters and their subsequent photos were entirely real. It is apparent that the spiritualists were using the documents via the mechanical-based medium of photography as an attempt to save their religion and their beliefs. One of the more outlandish attests to the validity of the spirit photographs come from Moses A. Dow, who testified in defense of Mumler in his trial by stating that he had communicated with the spirit of his deceased colleague Mabel Warren, who told him to visit Mumler and identified what she would be wearing when photographed. The spirit had told Dow she would be wearing a white dress and floral wreath, as seen here. This photograph in particular is interesting, as the apparition of Mabel's spirit directly covers a portion of Dow's head, something that he cites in his testimony as unequivocal proof the photo was not taken on a previously prepared plate. Spirit photography offers something that traditional post-mortem photography does not: the opportunity to see oneself within a different view, one that posits the mourned watching over the mourner, as well as a view that simultaneously demonstrates a reflection of the mourner's own inevitable demise. The spirit photograph then solidifies the idea to mourners that their loved ones are always with them and are always watching over them, and allow for conceptualizations of the soul and afterlife to be better understood within more material groundings. Because photos such as Mumler's manifest the unseen spirits in distinct, albeit sheer bodies, whose faces remain identifiable to their loved ones, and are shown dressed in popular fashion of the time, the sitter realizes that those who pass on retain their discrete bodies within the material afterlife. Believers and skeptics alike both remained at the forefront of spirit photography into the 20th century. Believers clung on to the unshaken belief of photography's adherence to truth and science. Skeptics remained assertive that the photos were nothing more but displays of a photographer's darkroom tricks. In turn, Mumler's practices within spirit photography allowed for mourners within the 19th century to picture themselves, literally and physically, within a newly understood context of a material afterlife through photographing the immaterial world. Seeing is believing, or is it?